Ana Martinez stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman who gazed back. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, testament to countless sleepless nights spent worrying about mounting bills and her children's future. At 42, she hadn't imagined she'd be starting over, transforming her family home into a shared living space just to keep the lights on. The sound of footsteps in the hallway drew her attention. Her new tenant, Liam Connor, was headed downstairs, probably to make his morning coffee. At 26, he brought an unexpected energy to the house that her children, Michael and Sophie, had immediately embraced. Perhaps too much so, she thought, remembering how they'd begged him to join their movie night last weekend. "Morning, Anna." Liam's voice carried up the stairs, warm and familiar. "Made extra coffee if you'd like some." She smiled despite herself. In the 3 months since he'd moved in, Liam had become more than just a tenant. He was the handyman who fixed the leaky faucet without being asked, the friendly face who helped Sophie with her math homework, and the unexpected ally who made this transition feel less like failure and more like adaptation. Coming down, she called back, running a hand through her shoulder-length brown hair. James would be picking her up in an hour for their lunch date, and she needed to look presentable. James Parker, the successful architect she'd been seeing for the past 2 months, represented everything stable and secure that she craved. At 48, he was established, confident, and, most importantly, interested in a serious relationship. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and toasted bagels. Liam stood at the counter, dressed for his graduate classes in dark jeans and a fitted gray sweater that emphasized his athletic build. He pushed a steaming mug toward her with a smile that crinkled the corners of his green eyes. "Rough night?" he asked, gesturing to the papers spread across the dining table, bills she'd been reviewing until late. "That obvious, huh?" Anna accepted the coffee gratefully. "Just trying to keep all the plates spinning." "You know, I could help with that," Liam offered, leaning against the counter. "I used to do bookkeeping for my dad's business. Maybe we could set up a better system for tracking everything." Before Anna could respond, the front door chimed. James stood in the doorway, early and impeccable in his tailored suit. His dark eyes narrowed slightly at the domestic scene before him, Anna in her morning robe, sharing coffee with her young tenant. "Hope I'm not interrupting," James said, his tone carrying an edge that made Anna straighten instinctively. "Thought we might grab breakfast before the meeting." "I'll just go change," Anna said quickly, catching the tension in James's jaw. As she hurried upstairs, she heard Liam and James exchange terse greetings, their forced politeness barely masking an underlying current of hostility. In her bedroom, Anna changed into a navy dress that James had complimented before, her movements automatic as her mind wandered. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting in her carefully reconstructed world. James's increasing possessiveness, while flattering at first, had begun to feel suffocating. Meanwhile, Liam's presence offered a different kind of security, unconditional support without expectations. When she returned downstairs, Liam had disappeared to his classes, but the tension lingered. James guided her to his car with a hand on her lower back, his grip slightly tighter than necessary. "You know, sweetheart," he said as they pulled away from the house, "having such a young man living in your home, it doesn't look right. People might talk." Anna felt a flutter of irritation. People can talk all they want. Liam helps with the bills, and the kids adore him. He's been a blessing during this transition. James's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Transitions are temporary, Anna. At some point, you need to think about more permanent arrangements. Like maybe selling that house and moving somewhere more suitable." The suggestion hung in the air like a storm cloud. Anna turned to look out the window, watching her neighborhood recede in the side mirror. The house was more than just walls and a roof, it was where her children had grown up, where their memories lived in every corner. The thought of leaving it behind made her chest tighten. As they drove in tense silence, Anna's phone buzzed with a text from Liam, "Hey, picking up Sophie from soccer practice later. Michael asked for pizza night, cool if I grab some on the way back?" Anna smiled as she typed a quick, "Thank you," feeling James's eyes flick toward her phone. The contrast between the two men in her life couldn't have been starker, James with his polished exterior and rigid expectations, Liam with his easy warmth and natural integration into her family's rhythm. Later that evening, as laughter drifted up from the kitchen where Liam was teaching the kids to make pizza from scratch, Anna stood in her bedroom doorway, listening. James's words echoed in her mind, along with a growing awareness that the transition he spoke of might not be leading where she'd initially thought. Little did she know, the careful balance she'd struck was about to shatter, forcing her to question everything, and everyone, she thought she could trust. The autumn evening wrapped around Anna's house like a wool blanket, golden streetlights casting long shadows through the windows. She stood in her kitchen, mechanically chopping vegetables for dinner, while her mind wandered to the growing tension that had begun to permeate her carefully balanced life. James had been increasingly present lately, dropping by unannounced, suggesting changes to her routine, her home, her life. The sound of raised voices from the backyard cut through her thoughts. Anna's knife stilled mid-chop as she recognized James's controlled anger and Liam's measured responses. She moved quietly to the window, her heart racing as she watched the scene unfold in the gathering dusk. James stood with his back rigid, his usual polished demeanor cracking around the edges. "I've seen how you look at her," he was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the evening air. "You think I don't notice the way you've inserted yourself into their lives?" Liam remained calm, though Anna could see the tension in his shoulders. "This isn't about Anna, is it? This is about the woman I saw you with at Riverside Plaza last week." The words hit Anna like a physical blow. She gripped the windowsill, knuckles white, as James took a step toward Liam. "You're pathetic," James spat. "Making up stories to drive a wedge between us. What's your endgame here? You think she'd leave me for someone barely older than her son?" "I think she deserves to know the truth," Liam replied steadily. "That woman wasn't a client, James. I saw you kiss her. Anna doesn't need more betrayal in her life." Anna's world tilted sideways. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. She must have made some sound because both men turned toward the window. Their eyes found her, and for a moment, time suspended like a drop of water before falling. James was through the back door first, his face transformed into a mask of concern. "Anna, sweetheart, let me explain. He's trying to manipulate you. Think about it, why would a young man like him care so much about your relationship unless he had ulterior motives?" Liam followed, maintaining a respectful distance. "Anna, I'm sorry you had to hear it like this. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. I have proof if you want to see it." "Proof?" James laughed, but there was an edge of panic in it. "What, some staged photos? Or maybe you followed me to business meetings and twisted what you saw? Anna, you know me. We've built something real here." Anna's children's voices drifted down from upstairs, Michael's laughter, Sophie's music, reminding her of everything at stake. She looked between the two men, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. James, successful and polished, offering security wrapped in silk-lined control. Liam, younger but somehow steadier, whose presence had brought light back into their home. "I need you both to leave," she said quietly, her voice stronger than she felt. "Now." "Anna, please," James stepped toward her, but she held up a hand. "I said leave." The steel in her voice surprised even her. "Both of you. I need to think." Later that night, after the house had settled into silence, Anna sat in her darkened kitchen. Her phone displayed a string of messages from James, each more desperate than the last. Explanations, accusations, promises, a tapestry of words that felt hollow against the weight in her chest. A soft knock at the kitchen door made her jump. Liam stood there, hesitant, holding out his phone. "I know you asked for space," he said quietly. "But before I go, you should see this." After that, whatever you decide, I'll respect it. On his screen was a series of photos, James with a younger woman at various locations around the city. Their body language spoke of intimacy, familiarity. The final photo showed them entering an apartment building, James's hand possessive on the small of her back, the same way he touched Anna. The apartment is in her name, Liam said softly. Lauren Mitchell. She's a junior architect at his firm. I only know because my friend Dave works in the same building. He's the one who noticed and told me. Anna stared at the photos, each one a crack in the foundation of trust she'd been rebuilding. Why? She whispered, not sure if she was asking Liam or the universe at large. Why tell me? Why get involved? Liam's response was quiet but firm. Because I've watched you put yourself back together piece by piece. Because your kids deserve better than watching their mother go through another betrayal. Because, he paused, choosing his words carefully, because sometimes doing the right thing means being the bad guy in someone else's story. He set his phone on the counter and stepped back. I'll stay with a friend for a few days. Give you space to process. Whatever you decide about James, about the house, about everything, I'll support it. But you deserve to know the truth. As his footsteps faded down the hall, Anna picked up his phone, scrolling through the evidence of James's deception. Each photo was a key, unlocking memories of subtle signs she'd ignored, the late meetings, the changed passwords, the deflected questions about his weekend plans. In the quiet of her kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the dinner she never finished preparing, Anna felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just anger or betrayal, it was recognition. She'd been here before, believing in someone who painted pretty pictures of the future while slowly dismantling her present. The question now was, what would she do with this truth? As she climbed the stairs to check on her sleeping children, Anna's mind churned with possibilities and fears. But beneath it all, a small voice whispered that maybe this revelation wasn't just an ending, maybe it was also a beginning. She just wasn't sure yet what kind of beginning it would be. The morning light filtered through Anna's bedroom window, catching dust motes that danced in the air like memories she couldn't quite grasp. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, scrolling through James's messages from the past week. Each one carried a familiar pattern, alternating between desperate apologies and subtle accusations, promises of change and veiled threats about her future. You're overthinking this, sweetheart, his latest message read. Lauren means nothing. But your tenant? He's poisoning your mind against me. Think about what people will say when they learn you're living with a man half your age. Think about your children's reputation. Anna's finger hovered over the delete button, remembering similar messages from her ex-husband in those final months. The same mix of manipulation and concern, love and control, wrapped in words that seemed caring on the surface but left bruises on her soul. Downstairs, she heard Sophie's morning routine, the gentle clatter of cereal bowls, the murmur of morning cartoons. Michael's door remained closed, her teenage son had grown increasingly withdrawn lately. She wondered how much they sensed, these children who had already weathered one family storm. The house felt different without Liam's presence. He'd been gone for 5 days, maintaining his promise to give her space. The kitchen seemed emptier without his morning coffee ritual, the evening quieter without his easy conversations with the kids. Even the small repairs he used to handle had begun to show, a dripping faucet, a squeaking door hinge, tangible reminders of his absence. Anna made her way downstairs, pausing at the family photos lining the wall. New ones had appeared over the past months, Sophie's soccer victory with Liam cheering in the background, Michael actually smiling at his science fair with Liam beside him explaining something about the project. When had this young man become so woven into their family's fabric? Mom. Sophie's voice carried from the kitchen. Are you okay? You've been standing there for a while. Anna entered the kitchen, finding her daughter's worried eyes studying her. At 12, Sophie had developed an uncanny ability to read emotional undercurrents. I'm fine, sweetie. Just thinking. About James? Sophie asked, pushing her cereal bowl aside. Or about Liam? The directness of the question caught Anna off guard. What makes you ask that? Sophie shrugged, but her expression remained serious. James looks at you the way Dad used to, before, you know. Like he's angry even when he's smiling. But Liam. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Liam looks at you like you're strong, not broken. The observation hit Anna like a physical blow. She sat heavily at the kitchen table, her daughter's words crystallizing something she'd been feeling but couldn't name. James's attention had always carried an edge of possession, a subtle reminder that she needed him. But Liam's support had been different, expecting nothing, demanding nothing, simply believing in her ability to stand on her own. When did you get so wise? Anna asked, reaching for her daughter's hand. Someone had to, Sophie replied with a small smile. Michael's too busy being angry at the world. As if summoned by his name, Michael appeared in the doorway, his teenage frame filling it more each day. Mom. Can we talk? Anna nodded, watching as her son took the seat across from her. He fidgeted with his phone before speaking. I heard them, you know. James and Liam fighting in the backyard. And I saw James too, with that woman. At the mall last weekend when I was with Dad. I should have told you, but. But what, sweetheart? But James said if I did, he'd convince you to sell the house. Said we'd be better off in one of his properties downtown. I didn't want to leave our home, Mom. Not again. The pieces clicked into place, Michael's recent withdrawal, his sudden hostility toward James, the way he'd begun spending more time in his room when James visited. Another child carrying an adult secret, trying to protect what remained of their world. Anna pulled her son into a hug, feeling him resist briefly before melting into it like he used to when he was younger. Sophie joined them, creating a circle of warmth in the morning light. Later that day, as Anna sorted through old photos, she found one from her wedding day. She barely recognized herself, young, hopeful, unaware of the years of subtle control and emotional manipulation that lay ahead. She'd rebuilt herself from those ashes, piece by piece, only to nearly fall into the same pattern with James. Her phone buzzed with another message from him, I miss you. The woman you saw, it's not what you think. Let me explain over dinner. I'll send a car. Before she could respond, another message appeared, this one from Liam, no pressure, but the kids mentioned Michael's science project is due tomorrow. I still have my notes from helping him, if he needs them. Hope you're finding the clarity you need. The contrast between the messages struck her, one trying to draw her back into a familiar dance of dependency, the other simply offering support without strings. She thought of Sophie's words about how each man looked at her, of Michael's burden of secrets, of the quiet ways her life had begun to echo her past. Standing in her bedroom, Anna caught her reflection in the mirror, not young anymore, not broken either, but something in between. A woman who had rebuilt herself once and could do it again. The question was, what would she build this time, and with whom? As evening approached, she heard a car pull into her driveway. Through the window, she saw James stepping out, roses in hand, his confident stride suggesting he expected forgiveness. But behind his polished exterior, she now recognized something familiar and dangerous, the shadow of control she'd escaped once before. Anna reached for her phone, her fingers steady as she typed two messages. The first to James, don't come to the door. We're done. The second to Liam, the kids miss you. So do I. Come home when you can. The roses lay abandoned on her doorstep as James's car pulled away, but Anna didn't watch it go. Instead, she sat between her children on the couch, planning Michael's project presentation, feeling the first tendrils of genuine peace she'd known in weeks. Whatever came next, she would face it clear-eyed and free from the shadows of her past. The autumn air carried a bite that hadn't been there a week ago, much like the new undercurrent of tension that rippled through Anna's carefully reconstructed world. She sat in her favorite coffee shop, warming her hands around a ceramic mug, watching her longtime friend Rachel fidget with her napkin across the table. "There's something I need to tell you," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Liam." The name hung between them like smoke. Liam had returned to the house 3 days ago, slipping back into their daily rhythm as if he'd never left. The children had brightened immediately, and Anna had felt something settle in her chest, a piece she hadn't realized she'd been missing. "What about him?" Anna asked, noting the flush creeping up Rachel's neck. "We've been seeing each other," Rachel confessed, her words tumbling out. "It started last week, after he moved out temporarily. He needed someone to talk to, and I thought I could help." Anna's mug stilled halfway to her lips. "Seeing each other?" Rachel's eyes darted away. "It's not serious. We've had coffee a few times, dinner once. He mostly talks about you and the kids, actually. About how worried he is." The revelation settled like ice in Anna's stomach. Not because of jealousy, she had no claim on Liam's personal life, but because something about the situation felt wrong, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong spot. Later that evening, Anna stood in her kitchen, mechanically preparing dinner while her mind churned. The sound of Liam's laughter drifted in from the living room where he was helping Michael with homework. Everything seemed normal, and yet. Her phone buzzed with a text from James, "Heard about Liam and Rachel. Still think he's the honest one? Call me when you're ready to talk about what really matters." Anna's hands trembled as she set down her phone. How did James know? And why did this news feel like another manipulation, another layer of control she hadn't seen coming? "Need help with that?" Liam's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, wearing the easy smile that had become such a familiar part of their household. "Why Rachel?" The question escaped before she could stop it. The smile faded from Liam's face. "Ah. She told you." "James knew too," Anna said quietly. "Interesting coincidence." Liam leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think, Anna. Rachel approached me after I left. She said she was worried about you, about how James might react to the photos. She suggested that if we were seen together, it might deflect attention. Make it seem less like I was interested in you personally." The pieces began shifting in Anna's mind, forming a different picture. Rachel's been friends with James's sister for years, she realized aloud. She was the one who introduced us. "I figured it out too late," Liam admitted. "The day after our dinner, I saw her meeting James at that cafe on Burton Street. They didn't see me, but their conversation seemed intense. That's when I knew I'd been played." Anna thought about Rachel's nervous energy at the coffee shop, the way she'd emphasized how much Liam talked about Anna and the kids. It hadn't been a confession, it had been a performance. "He's trying to discredit you," Anna said slowly. "Make it look like you were playing games, manipulating everyone." "I should have seen it coming," Liam said, his voice tight with frustration. "Should have realized Rachel was too eager to listen, too interested in details about our household. I was stupid." "No," Anna touched his arm gently. "You were kind. There's a difference." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. From the living room, Sophie called out, "Mom. The pasta's boiling over." The domestic crisis broke the tension, and they moved together to save dinner. As they worked side by side in the kitchen, Anna felt the weight of realization settling into her bones. James wasn't just trying to maintain his control over her, he was systematically attempting to destroy any support system that might help her break free. Her phone buzzed again, Rachel this time. "We should talk more. There's so much you don't understand about James, about what he can offer you and the kids." Another piece clicked into place. How many of her friendships had been quietly shaped by James's influence? How many people in her life were watching, reporting back, helping him maintain his carefully constructed narrative. That night, after the children were asleep, Anna found Liam sitting on the back porch. The same spot where he'd confronted James about Lauren. The same spot where her world had begun to shift on its axis. "I'm not going to stop helping you and the kids," he said without turning around. "Even if that's what they want. Even if it makes me look bad." Anna sat beside him, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I know," she said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, each lost in thought. Anna's mind wandered to all the subtle ways James had tried to isolate her, suggesting she quit her job to focus on their future, critiquing her friendships, pushing her to sell her house. She thought of Rachel's betrayal, of all the seemingly innocent questions her once trusted friend had asked about her relationship with Liam. But most of all, she thought about strength, not the brittle kind that comes from shutting people out, but the resilient kind that grows from letting the right people in. Her phone buzzed one final time that evening. "James again, do you see now? Everyone has an agenda. Everyone except me. I'm the only one you can trust." Anna looked at the message for a long moment before blocking his number. Beside her, Liam continued stargazing, his presence solid and uncomplicated in the gathering darkness. Sometimes, she realized, the clearest truth comes not from dramatic revelations, but from quiet moments of certainty. The question was, what would she do with this truth? The discovery came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Anna was organizing James's forgotten belongings, a spare tie, some business cards, a folder of documents he'd left behind during his frequent visits. Her hands stilled as she found 2 plane tickets tucked into an envelope, a luxury resort in Bali, dated for next month, reserved for James Parker and Lauren Mitchell. The paper trembled in her hands, not from shock or grief, but from a deeper recognition. This wasn't just about infidelity, it was about calculated deception. While pressuring her to sell her home, while criticizing her choices, while isolating her from friends, he'd been planning this elaborate getaway with another woman. "Mom." Michael's voice carried from the doorway. "You okay?" Anna looked up to find her son watching her with worried eyes that seemed too old for his 15 years. Behind him, Sophie lingered in the hallway, her small hand clutching her brother's sleeve. These children had already learned to read the silence between words, to sense the tremors of approaching storms. "Come here, both of you," Anna said softly, opening her arms. They came without hesitation, Sophie tucking herself against Anna's side while Michael stood close, protective in his adolescent way. "I need to tell you something important." She explained about the tickets, about James's manipulation, about the slow realization of how he tried to separate them from their home, their friends, their sense of security. She watched understanding dawn in their eyes, not surprise, she noticed, but recognition. "He reminded me of Dad," Michael said quietly. "The way he'd get angry but pretend he wasn't. The way he'd make us feel bad for normal things." Sophie nodded against Anna's shoulder. "He didn't like when we laughed too loud. Said we were being disrespectful. But Liam always laughs with us." The mention of Liam brought a fresh wave of clarity. His presence in their home hadn't just been about paying bills or fixing leaky faucets. He'd been a mirror, showing them what genuine kindness looked like, what a home should feel like, safe, warm, filled with laughter. That evening, Anna sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, methodically documenting everything. The pattern of James's behavior, the isolation attempts, the financial pressure, the emotional manipulation. She found old texts where he'd subtly undermined her confidence, emails where he'd pressed her about selling the house, photos of him with Lauren that dated back months. Liam found her there past midnight, still typing. He set a cup of tea beside her without comment, his presence steady and undemanding. "I used to think I was weak," Anna said finally, breaking the silence. "For letting my ex-husband control me for so long. For almost letting James do the same thing. But documenting all this. I'm realizing something." "What's that?" Liam asked quietly. Survival isn't weakness. Neither is asking for help. She closed the laptop, meeting his eyes. Thank you. Not just for the photos of James and Lauren, but for showing my children that kindness doesn't come with conditions. Anna. Liam started, then paused, choosing his words carefully. What you've done, protecting your kids, rebuilding your life, refusing to be manipulated, that's not just survival. That's strength. The next morning, Anna made 3 important calls. The first was to her lawyer, sharing the documented pattern of James's behavior and requesting a restraining order. The second was to her therapist, scheduling sessions to help her and the children process this latest betrayal. The third was to her boss, letting him know she wouldn't be accepting James's offer to quit her job for a better opportunity at his firm. Each call felt like laying another brick in the foundation of her independence. Not running away, not hiding, but standing firmly in her truth. Later that week, a package arrived from James, expensive jewelry with a note begging forgiveness. Once, such a gesture might have swayed her. Now, she recognized it for what it was, another attempt at control wrapped in guilt and false remorse. She returned the package unopened, with a single note, "My home is not for sale. Neither is my freedom." That evening, she sat with her children on their back porch, the same spot where truths had unraveled and new understandings had formed. Sophie was teaching Liam her latest soccer moves while Michael worked on his homework, the domestic scene so natural it made her heart ache. "Mom," Sophie called, breathless from playing. "Watch this." Anna watched her daughter move with confident grace, so different from the withdrawn child she'd been during the divorce. She watched Michael smile despite himself at his sister's antics, his shoulders relaxed in a way they hadn't been in months. She watched Liam cheer them both on, his joy in their achievements entirely genuine. This, she realized, was what healing looked like. Not the absence of scars, but the presence of genuine laughter. Not the erasure of past hurts, but the courage to trust again, carefully, wisely, with eyes wide open. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "James is telling everyone you're having a breakdown. Let me help fix this." Anna looked at the message for a long moment, then turned off her phone. The autumn evening wrapped around them like a blanket, full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight was for remembering what real love felt like. The kind that built up instead of tearing down, that celebrated instead of controlled, that allowed space for growth instead of demanding perfection. In the growing darkness, Anna watched her family, born and chosen, and felt the quiet strength that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you deserve. The morning sun painted Anna's kitchen in shades of gold, catching the steam rising from her coffee cup. 6 months had passed since she'd found those plane tickets, since she'd chosen to stand firmly in her truth. The house around her hummed with the quiet energy of early morning, Sophie's gentle footsteps upstairs, Michael's music drifting from his room, Liam's familiar rhythm in the garden where he'd started growing herbs. She traced her finger along the worn edge of the kitchen counter, remembering James's last attempt to see her 3 months ago. He'd appeared at her office, Lauren's betrayal still fresh on his face, offering grand gestures and familiar promises. The old Anna might have wavered, might have seen his pain as more important than her peace. But she'd simply gathered her papers, walked past him, and continued with her day. The restraining order sat in her desk drawer now, unused but present, a reminder that her boundaries were not suggestions, and her healing was not negotiable. "Mom." Sophie padded into the kitchen, sleep-rumpled but smiling. "Can we have breakfast in the garden? The tomatoes Liam planted are finally ripe." Anna watched her daughter move confidently through their kitchen, so different from the anxious child who'd once flinched at loud voices. "Of course, sweetheart. Want to help me carry everything out?" They worked together, assembling a morning feast. Michael emerged from his room, automatically reaching for extra plates without being asked. These small moments of synchronicity, Anna realized, were the true measure of their healing, not the absence of scars, but the presence of trust in everyday gestures. "The basil's going crazy," Liam announced, entering through the back door with dirt on his knees and sunshine in his smile. "Think we could make pesto this weekend?" Anna caught his eye across the kitchen, feeling the familiar warmth of understanding pass between them. In the months since James's exit, their relationship had evolved with the patience of growing things, organic, unhurried, rooted in mutual respect and genuine care. They gathered around the garden table, morning light dappling their faces through the leaves. Sophie was describing her upcoming soccer tournament, while Michael showed Liam his latest coding project. The scene was beautifully ordinary, yet Anna felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. "You okay, Mom?" Michael asked, his teenager's bravado softening with concern. "More than okay," she assured him, reaching for his hand. "Just grateful." Later that morning, as the kids departed for school, Anna found herself alone with Liam in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, his movements careful with her mother's old plates, the ones James had suggested replacing with something more suitable. "I've been thinking," she said, watching him work. "About what you said that night, about being enchanted by me." His hand stilled in the soapy water. "Anna, you don't have to. Let me finish," she said gently. "I've spent so much time learning what love isn't. It isn't control dressed up as protection. It isn't sacrifice disguised as duty. It isn't shrinking yourself to fit someone else's narrative." She moved closer, touching his arm. "But this? What you've shown my children about respect, what you've taught me about patience, how you've helped us all remember what it feels like to simply be ourselves. That feels a lot like love." Liam turned to face her, his eyes bright with emotion. "I never wanted to pressure you. After everything with James, with your ex-husband." "I know," Anna smiled. "That's exactly why this is different. You never needed me to be smaller to make yourself feel bigger. You never saw my strength as a threat." The moment stretched between them, rich with possibility. From outside came the sound of birds in the garden, the rustle of leaves in the morning breeze, the simple music of a home at peace. "So," Liam said softly, "what happens now?" Anna thought about the journey that had brought them here. About the woman who'd once viewed love as a transaction, who'd believed security meant surrender. About the mother who'd learned that protecting her children meant showing them what healthy love looked like. About the survivor who'd discovered that true strength often comes disguised as vulnerability. "Now," she said, "we keep growing. Together." That evening, Anna sat on her back porch, watching Sophie and Michael help Liam with the garden. Their laughter floated on the autumn air, mixing with the scent of herbs and the last warmth of the setting sun. Her phone lay silent beside her. She'd finally blocked Rachel last week, another quiet act of self-preservation. She thought about the word healing and how inadequate it was for describing this journey. It wasn't about returning to who she'd been before the trauma. It was about becoming someone new, someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate with herself and others. The garden lights came on automatically as dusk deepened, illuminating her family in a soft glow. Sophie was perched on Liam's shoulders, reaching for the wind chimes they'd hung together. Michael was actually smiling, phone forgotten in his pocket, as he described his plans for a computerized watering system. This was what safety felt like, Anna realized. Not the rigid perfection James had demanded, but the messy, beautiful reality of genuine connection. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage. Not the silence of suppression, but the music of unguarded laughter. As if reading her thoughts, Liam looked up and caught her eye. His smile held no demands, no expectations, just the simple joy of being present in this moment, with these people, in this place they'd all chosen to call home. Anna smiled back, feeling the last pieces of her heart's armor gently dissolve. She was not the same woman who had posted that room for rent ad so many months ago. That woman had been looking for financial security, for a way to keep her walls from crumbling. Instead, she'd found something far more valuable, the courage to tear down the walls herself and build something stronger in their place. The evening wrapped around them like a blanket, full of the quiet miracle of ordinary love. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own moments of doubt and growth. But tonight, in this garden they'd planted together, Anna knew with bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. This was what victory looked like, not a single triumphant moment, but 1,000 small choices to keep believing in the possibility of joy. Not the end of her story, but the beginning of a new chapter, written in her own voice, at her own pace, surrounded by the kind of love that builds instead of breaks.